Thanks, Ciarán Comhairle. Minister, you're aware that presently there are thousands of workers employed by the DAA and the SAA who are being instructed that they must sign a waiver by the 15th of March or stand to lose lump sum payments into a new pension scheme. Now, the Secretary-General of your department initiated or sought to initiate a process on the 2nd of December in order to address some of the concerns that remain outstanding of the workforce who were members of the IAS scheme. I'm wondering why the Secretary-General's invitation was not acted upon when requested, why that process has not involved SIPTU, and what you, as the sole owner, if you like, of those companies is going to do to lift that gun to the head of those workers at the moment.
Thank you, Ciarán Comhairle. First, I must again make it clear that the IASS and its funding are primarily matters for the trustee, the companies participating in the scheme members and the Pensions Authority. Following SIPTU's recommendation last November to its members in the DAA Shannon Airport Authority to reject the IASS trustee proposal, the Secretaries-General of my department and of the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation wrote to the expert panel on the 2nd of December in relation to clarifying certain industrial relations issues which were the subject of the expert panel report completed last June. The expert panel was asked to re-engage with SIPTU and ICTU to provide clarity on these matters. There were discussions immediately before Christmas between the departments, members of the expert panel and ICTU in relation to this engagement, which helped to refine the areas of focus for the panel. Given the unavailability of the relevant personnel over the holiday period, I understand that it was just after Christmas before arrangements could be agreed for the expert panel to engage with ICTU and to establish the relevant position of the unions involved and DAA and SAA. That process is ongoing, and it is for the panel to complete this work as effectively and efficiently as possible. Given that the trustees' proposal was implemented with effect from the 31st of December, it is vital that the industrial relations issues among certain DAA and Shannon Airport Authority staff are resolved as soon as possible. In that regard, the deadline of the 15th of March 2015 for the signing of waivers is a matter for DAA and SAA. At this stage, it is important that there is clarity on the areas of concern so that IASS members, along with other DAA and SAA staff, have visibility on their future pension arrangements.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
Thanks, Ciarán Comhairle. Minister, I don't think you'll be able to kick this one solely to the responsibility of the trustees, and I'm not sure whether you have been ill-informed or deliberately misled as regards what's going on at the moment. The facts are that the Secretary-General of your department and the Department of Jobs contacted the expert panel and sought that a process to resolve some of the difficulties would be engaged in. That process allegedly has started, but it has not involved the people who represent the majority workers there who have the issues. And let's look at what the issues and the problems are here. They're twofold. On the one hand, there's substantial changes being proposed to the contracts of airport fire and police service workers who are all represented by SIPTU. They haven't been asked or involved in any process on this. And critically, we're dealing with one pension scheme, the IASS scheme, which involved two companies, Aer Lingus and the DAA, and yet an entirely different set of assumptions was put forward for both, which meant that workers in the DAA, and let's remember they've rejected it by 90%, were being faced with, for example, a worker who was aged 53 in both companies, about 27 years service. The worker in Aer Lingus was getting a lump sum of $95,000 in their pension scheme. The worker in the DAA, although they were on higher pay, was getting a lump sum of $65,000. Now, how could that be realistic in a pension scheme that involved both of them? Clearly, one set of assumptions was wrong. This has to be addressed, and holding a gun to workers' heads is not going to resolve it.
Thank you, Minister.
And the points that the Deputy has raised there in relation to the concerns that workers have, and also the fact that many of these concerns were obviously instrumental in the ballots that happened within Dublin Airport and Shannon Airport Authority, is the background to why the Secretary-Generals of my own department and the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Innovation wrote to the expert panel to ask them to engage in a process of clarification. Now, for the Deputy's own information, the particular matters that they were asked to clarify and engage in related to the actuarial assumptions used for the purposes of lump sums, the applications of proposals towards the lower paid, the proposed contributions to the new defined contribution scheme, and implementation of medical fitness testing procedures for airport fire and police service over the age of 60 and retirement arrangements between the ages of 60 and 65.
Thank you, Minister.
Now, just in relation to a point the Deputy put to me there regarding engagement back to this initiative from other parties to the expert panel, my own information, Deputy, is that to date, ICTU provided a statement on behalf of Impact Unite, Mandate and the TWU, while SIPTU have provided a separate statement.
Thank you. Deputy Clare.
Yeah, these were the issues which were being sought to be addressed, but the problem is that SIPTU have not been asked to engage in this process or to contact the panel. In actual fact, they're the only people to put in a submission, but there have been meetings held and SIPTU have been excluded. And that's a recipe for absolute disaster, given that the workers whose living standards are being impacted upon in terms of the airport fire and police service and the members of the DAA are primarily organised by SIPTU. So I'm asking you, Minister, maybe you are misinformed by your department, but given that you took the initiative, or your Secretary-General did, at the start of December, there have been a meeting held under the auspices of ICTU on the 16th of January, and OK, we'll give that Christmas, people being away. That doesn't explain why SIPTU were not invited to that meeting. And if you're really serious about issues, because we've 90% of the workers have been voted against this proposal and they're still not happy, and what happens there is yet to be determined, then I think I would ask you to go back and ask them, given that there is supposedly a process, poor and all as it is, that you would get the DAA and the SAA, of which you are, like, you're the boss, it's 100% state-owned, lift the embargo on their heads, because otherwise there can't be meaningful talks to resolve this unless that's lifted.
Final reply, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. I mean, look, it's at least possible that you might be misinformed on this as well. Well, I'm glad to hear you have such certainty in relation to it. And it must be, that kind of certainty in relation to this matter. I am struck by. I have my own information in relation to this that I put on the record of the House, and I've answered each of the questions that you've put to me. And when I've answered them, you've then come on, and I've given you the answer in relation to this. SIPTU, the information that I have in relation to the process that has taken place there, and the answer that I have here, is SIPTU have provided a statement to the expert panel in relation to this issue. So they have provided this statement, and in the communication that I made, that my Secretary-General and the Department of Jobs, Enterprise and Innovation made to the expert panel, we requested that engagement take place between the expert panel and senior officials within SIPTU to facilitate engagement. So this is the information that I have. I understand that that process of engagement is underway. And if the Deputy has information to the contrary in relation to this, that would be something I would be interested in understanding further. But I will make the concluding point to you, is that while it's correct to say that Dublin Airport Authority is, of course, a state body, they have complete operational independence. So they have a board of directors, they have people out there, a management team out there, whose job it is to make decisions in relation to the long-term interests of the airport and the objectives that I have set.